Have you ever been chilling in San Marcos with your buds and you looked over and you're like, Bob, really wish there was a flowing artesian well that I could see here in San Marcos. Well, have I got a deal for you. Not only is there a flowing artesian well in San Marcos, but it is right on campus. No joke. It was drilled back in 1896 by the U.S. Fish Commission. And this well exists behind Freeman Hall. Back then, though, it was owned by the federal government. And the federal government was putting in a fish hatchery, and they needed a source of water. And so they drilled a well, this well that is behind me here. And they got down to 180 or so feet deep, and the drilling bit just dropped 4 feet. Now, when you're drilling a well and the drill bit just drops like that, it's an indication it's hit something really soft, geologically speaking, or it's just entered a cave. And it turned out to be the latter. Along with hitting that cave, water just came gushing out of the hole, flowing of its own volition at over 1,000 gallons per minute. People were elated. I'm sure they were, because I know I would have been. But it wasn't just water that came up the well. Something quite amazing was happening. There were critters coming up the well. And not only critters, but critters people had never seen before. The well initially was producing about half a pint of a shrimp-like creature was coming up. There were blind fish that were being produced. And then the most perplexing creature that came up was described as part animal, part fish, sightless and toothless. It was found in Texas. A critter we now know as the Texas blind salamander, 5 to 6 inches long. Originally, the well produced about 100 of these Texas blind salamanders a year, although by 1921 it was only producing a few a year, essentially a cone of depression that was sucking the salamanders out of this cave from down beneath. This well successfully was used to provide water for the fish hatchery, and this is a photo looking down on those ponds. And later on, when the fish hatchery outgrew its site, and it's now kind of on the south side of town, LBJ bequeathed the property to Texas State University, and Freeman Hall now exists over in this area here. You can see Spring Lake. This is probably the dam. It's either here or over here. And then we're up on Chautauqua Hill, where Old Main is now. In fact, back when this well was drilled, which is right in there, Old Main hadn't been built yet. And so the water from the well came out of the well and went into these various fish ponds, and then overflowed out. Here's San Marcos River back in the day when it hadn't been channelized yet. And they must not have liked football back then, because I don't see the Bobcats football stadium. Here's a later picture. The well is back in this inlet here with all this growth. The U.S. Fish Commission built an office at the head. Presently, it's a parking lot now for JCK. And then here are these fish ponds that we saw. Obviously, Old Main now has been built up on Chautauqua Hill. This old building still exists. It is now belongs to the city of San Marcos and is in a park. And we'll go ahead and take a peek at it. These critters coming up the well, it made state, national, and international news. Here's Lancaster, Pennsylvania paper, Queer Creatures in Well, Underground Nondescripts That Interest Men of Science. The Smithsonian Institution actually did quite a bit of early biological work on the critters that came up out of the well. There's a number of old newspaper reports, 1896. This is from the Boston Daily Globe. What was cool about this one was it actually had a drawing of the Texas blind salamander. Queer thing from a well, toothless and sightless, discovered by government workmen engaged in boring an artesian well. This thing, people didn't quite know what it was. So that's the background. Let's go ahead and do our little virtual field trip of a flowing artesian well, and that well still flows today. Super cool. So here's that historic photo again of that well, and here is the well today. Almost exactly the way it was back when it was first finished out back in 1896, and you can see the well there in the middle. Bunch of different diversion infrastructure in there. Pretty sure these little concrete things on the left are for the diversions. And again, just some old pipe infrastructure down in there, controlling where the water goes. And this basin, I believe, was in part built to show off the well, but then also capture the critters coming out. This is one of the fish hatchery ponds. You can see the fish out there. Looks like Benjamin Schwartz needs to get out there and clear the muck out. View of the hatchery ponds looking up onto Chautauqua Hill and Old Main. And here's the same view today. You can see a JCK, a peak on the left. Hard to see Old Main. Let's zoom in. There it is. The trees are in the way, so we can't quite do a straight comparison. Here's the old office building for the Fish Commission. Beautiful building, and it still exists there on a city park at 206 North Allen Parkway. You can go check it out. Here's a different view, kind of the downstream view of that well, and here's that same perspective today. And that well is flowing. You get down in there, you can hear the gurgling. That little square steel thing is where U.S. Fish and Wildlife folks will come out here periodically and check nets. They kind of net the discharge and see if they get any critters, any salamanders. And they actually keep a collection of salamanders down at their new facility south of town. Yep, you hear that gurgling. Now here's the Texas blind salamander, the drawing that was in that Boston paper, and then here's what they look like in life. So that was actually a pretty dang good drawing. Goofy little critters, but despite those spindly legs, they are pretty handy at and agile at getting around. And some biological papers say that they're hardier than they look. Oh, get that finger out of the way. Let me out. Let me out. Help. Let me out. These are in the Discovery Hall over at the Meadow Center. I love street art, and here's some street art of a Texas blind salamander up Sesame Creek along Sesame Drive. And then there's Karsten, the Texas blind salamander the Edwards Aquifer Authority is. And this is me just hanging out with him. He's a lot of fun to hang out with. And then down at the new Fish Hatchery Center, this is Godzilla, and she is believed to be about 50 years old. So these salamanders live quite a long time. Just another view of one of the ponds and the valve works that they use to introduce water into these ponds that are kind of now at the front steps of Texas State University. Just really nice place to go walking around. And at the footsteps of JCK, these cool bridges you go across, there is a historic marker. So there you have it. There is the flowing artesian well in San Marcos at Texas State campus, still flowing. Quite magical.